A black woman enters the CEO's elevator to flee her toxic ex. Minutes later, something shocking happens. What started as a desperate escape from a controlling ex quickly spirals into something neither of them could have imagined. Trapped in an elevator with a powerful CEO, she thinks her day can't get worse until the doors open and everything changes. This isn't just about a broken elevator. It's about two people from completely different worlds being forced to confront their deepest fears. As secrets are shared, the CEO offers her something unexpected, a week away from her troubled life. But just as she begins to trust him, the past comes crashing back when her ex shows up, ready to destroy everything. With one shocking twist after another, can she finally break free from the man who's haunted her? Or will the man who stepped in to protect her become the biggest risk of all? Will love, trust, and safety be enough to save them both? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The morning sun streaked through the glass windows of the downtown office building, but Tasha barely noticed its warmth as she rushed through the revolving doors. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her access card, her mind still racing from the argument with Jason just 30 minutes ago. The echo of his harsh words and the sound of his fist hitting the wall beside her head kept replaying in her thoughts. "Get it together," she whispered to herself, pressing her palm against her chest to steady her rapid heartbeat. Her primary concern wasn't for herself. It was for Marcus, her 7-year-old son, who was safely at school. She'd made sure to drop him off early this morning, sensing that Jason's mood was particularly volatile. The lobby was busy with the usual morning crowd of professionals heading to their offices. Tasha moved through them like a ghost, her normally confident stride reduced to hurried, nervous steps. Her navy blue blazer felt like armor, but underneath, her white blouse was damp with cold sweat. She pressed the elevator button repeatedly, willing it to arrive faster. The security guard at the front desk, Mike, gave her a concerned look. He'd seen her come in late before, usually on days when her face showed traces of tears she'd tried to hide with makeup. Come on," she muttered, watching the numbers above the elevator slowly descend. When the doors finally opened, she rushed inside, positioning herself in the corner and taking a deep breath. She was so focused on regaining her composure that she didn't notice the tall figure that stepped in after her. The doors closed with a soft ding, and Tasha finally looked up, straight into the steely grey eyes of Ryan Fields. Her breath caught in her throat as recognition dawned. Everyone in the building knew who Ryan Fields was, the self-made billionaire CEO whose company occupied the top 10 floors of the building. His reputation preceded him: brilliant, demanding, and notoriously private. Standing over 6 feet tall in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, Ryan Fields cut an imposing figure. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his clean-shaven face bore the kind of sharp features that belonged on magazine covers. But it was his eyes that held Tasha's attention. They were observant and intense, currently fixed on her with an unreadable expression. Tasha quickly looked away, trying to make herself smaller in the corner. She could feel her phone vibrating in her purse, probably Jason calling to continue their argument. The thought made her hands shake harder, and she accidentally dropped her access card. Before she could bend to retrieve it, Ryan Fields had already picked it up. He held it out to her, and Tasha noticed his strong hands that had built an empire from nothing, according to the business magazines she'd read. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. As she reached for the card, their fingers brushed briefly, and Tasha felt an unexpected jolt of electricity at the contact. "Are you all right, Ms.?" Ryan's deep voice trailed off as he glanced at her access card before returning it. "Ms. Morrison?" The genuine concern in his tone caught her off guard. It was so different from the cold, calculating businessman she'd heard about. Tasha tried to form a response, but her phone buzzed again, making her flinch visibly. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly at her reaction. "You seem distressed." "I'm fine," Tasha said automatically, the words feeling hollow even to her own ears. "Just running late for a meeting." The elevator continued its ascent, and Tasha was acutely aware of Ryan Field's presence. He stood with the quiet confidence of someone used to commanding rooms, but there was something else too, a watchfulness that made her feel like he saw right through her practiced facade. Her phone buzzed again, and this time a small sob escaped her throat before she could stop it. She pressed her hand to her mouth, mortified at breaking down in front of Ryan Fields of all people. To her surprise, Ryan reached over and pressed the elevator's stop button. The car came to a gentle halt between floors, and he turned to face her fully. "Ms. Morrison, I don't mean to overstep, but you're clearly not fine." His voice was calm and steady, like an anchor in rough waters. "If someone is harassing you, there are resources available through HR. This building has excellent security and—" "Please!" Tasha interrupted, her voice cracking. I can't talk about it. I just need to get to my office." Ryan studied her face for a long moment, and Tasha felt exposed under his gaze. She knew what he must be seeing, a woman barely holding it together, mascara slightly smudged from earlier tears, hands still trembling despite her best efforts to appear professional. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a business card, holding it out to her. "Take this. My direct line is on the back. If you need help, any kind of help, call me, day or night." Tasha stared at the card, embossed with the simple text, Ryan Fields, CEO, and the company logo. She'd never heard of him personally intervening in any employee's problems before. Why would he care about her situation? "I couldn't possibly—" She started to protest, but Ryan gently placed the card in her hand. "Take it," he insisted softly. "Something tells me you might need it." Before Tasha could respond, he pressed the elevator button again, and they resumed their ascent. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but Tasha could feel Ryan's protective presence beside her, solid and reassuring. When the elevator reached her floor, Tasha stepped out on shaky legs. She turned back briefly, meeting Ryan's eyes one last time. In that moment, something passed between them, an understanding perhaps, or the beginning of something she couldn't yet name. "Thank you, Mr. Fields," she said quietly. "Ryan," he corrected, his expression softening slightly. "And remember what I said, Ms. Morrison. Anytime." As the elevator doors closed between them, Tasha clutched his business card tightly in her hand. For the first time that morning, she felt something besides fear, a small spark of hope, unexpected and fragile, but undeniably there. Her phone buzzed again in her purse, but this time she stood a little straighter. The weight of Ryan Field's business card in her hand reminded her that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. The elevator lurched suddenly, the lights flickering as the car ground to an abrupt halt. Tasha stumbled, her hand instinctively reaching out to steady herself against the wall. The sudden stop sent her heart racing, memories of feeling trapped flooding back with crushing intensity. "No, no, no," she whispered, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. The small space of the elevator seemed to shrink around her, and she pressed herself into the corner, trying to make herself as small as possible. Ryan Fields moved with careful deliberation, maintaining a respectful distance as he reached for the emergency button. His steady voice cut through her rising panic. "Everything's going to be fine. These systems have multiple safety backups." The emergency speaker crackled to life, and Ryan calmly reported their situation. "This is Ryan Fields. We're stuck between floors 15 and 16. 2 occupants, no immediate emergency, but please expedite if possible. Copy that, Mr. Fields. Engineering is aware and responding. Estimated time to restoration is 20 minutes. Tasha slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her phone buzzed again in her purse, and a small whimper escaped her lips. Ryan's eyes darted to the source of the sound, his expression growing concerned. "Ms. Morrison," he said softly, lowering himself to sit on the floor as well, though he maintained enough distance to not overwhelm her. "I know we're strangers, but sometimes that makes it easier to talk. Whatever's happening, you don't have to face it alone." The gentleness in his voice, so different from Jason's harsh tones, broke something loose inside her. "He won't stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Jason, my ex, he just won't leave us alone. Every time I think we're free, he finds another way to control us, to threaten us." Ryan remained silent, his presence steady and attentive, encouraging her to continue. Tasha found herself telling him everything. How Jason had seemed so charming at first. How the control had started small and grown increasingly suffocating. How he used their son Marcus as leverage to keep her under his thumb. "This morning," she continued, wiping away tears with shaking hands, "he showed up at our apartment. He was angry because I'd changed Marcus's daycare without telling him. He said—" Her voice caught. "He said if I didn't move back in with him, he'd take Marcus away forever. That he'd make sure I never saw my baby again." Ryan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. "Has he ever been physically violent?" Tasha shook her head. "No, but sometimes I think that would be easier to prove. It's all threats and manipulation. He makes me doubt myself, makes me feel crazy. The worst part is he's so good at hiding it from everyone else. To the outside world, he's this charming, successful guy who just wants to be with his family." "That's often how abusers operate," Ryan said quietly. "They're expert manipulators. Have you considered getting a restraining order?" "I've thought about it, but I'm scared it would just make him angrier, and without proof of physical abuse—" She trailed off, running her fingers through her hair in frustration. "I just need space to think, to breathe. Somewhere he can't find us while I figure out what to do next." Ryan was silent for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "I might be able to help with that," he said carefully. "My company owns several secure residential properties that we use for visiting executives. They're private, protected, and completely off the usual radar." Tasha looked up at him, surprise evident on her face. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." A shadow passed over Ryan's features. "Let's just say I recognize the look of someone who needs a safe harbor. I built my business from nothing, Ms. Morrison, and I learned early on that sometimes people just need someone to believe in them, to give them a chance to find their footing." The elevator hummed quietly around them as Tasha absorbed his words. "Tell me about that," she said softly. "Building your business, it must have been hard." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "It was. Started in my garage with just a computer and an idea. Everyone said it couldn't be done, that I was crazy to think I could compete with the established players." He chuckled quietly. "But sometimes the best motivation is having people tell you something's impossible." Tasha found herself smiling, despite her tears. "How did you handle the doubt? The fear of failing?" "By remembering that failure isn't final unless you let it be," he replied. "Every setback taught me something. Every closed door led me to find another way through." He paused, meeting her eyes. "The same principle applies to personal struggles, Ms. Morrison. What you're going through now, it's not the end of your story. It's just a difficult chapter." The elevator suddenly hummed back to life, the lights brightening to full strength. As they both stood up, Tasha felt something shift inside her, a small spark of determination taking root where there had only been fear before. "Thank you," she said quietly, straightening her clothes. "For listening. For understanding. I haven't felt heard like that in... I can't remember how long." Ryan nodded, his expression serious but kind. "Keep my card. The offer stands, day or night. Sometimes having options makes all the difference in finding the strength to make difficult decisions." The elevator resumed its journey upward, but the space between them felt different now. What had started as a chance encounter had somehow become a moment of genuine connection, of understanding between two people who, despite their different circumstances, recognized the universal human need for safety and support. The elevator jerked back into motion, the sudden movement making Tasha grab the handrail to steady herself. She watched the floor numbers tick upward, each illuminated digit bringing them closer to their destination. The silence between them felt different now, comfortable, almost protective. As the elevator slowed to a stop on the 35th floor, Ryan cleared his throat. "Ms. Morrison, I'd like to make you an offer." He turned to face her fully, his expression earnest. "I have a private cabin about 2 hours north of the city. It's completely secluded, surrounded by forest with top-notch security systems. I use it when I need to step away from the chaos of business life and clear my head." Tasha's heart skipped a beat. She studied his face, searching for any hint of ulterior motives, but found only sincere concern in his eyes. "I know it might sound strange," he continued, "but I'm offering you and Marcus use of it for 1 week. No strings attached. Just a chance to breathe and figure out your next steps without looking over your shoulder." The elevator doors opened, but neither of them moved. Tasha's mind whirled with possibilities and warnings. Everything she knew about personal safety screamed that accepting such an offer from a virtual stranger was dangerous. Yet something in Ryan's demeanor, in the way he'd listened without judgment, made her want to trust him. That's incredibly generous," she said carefully, "but I couldn't possibly—" "You can," Ryan interjected gently. "The cabin sits empty 90% of the time. It has everything you'd need. Fully stocked kitchen, reliable internet, even a small playground for Marcus. Most importantly, it has privacy. The entire property is gated, with round-the-clock security monitoring." Tasha wrapped her arms around herself, a habit she'd developed when feeling vulnerable. "Why would you do this for me? For us?" Ryan's expression softened slightly. "Because everyone deserves a safe place to catch their breath. Sometimes the hardest part of making a change is finding enough quiet to hear yourself think." They stepped out of the elevator together, moving to a quiet corner of the lobby. Tasha's mind raced with practical concerns. "I'd need to figure out work, and Marcus's daycare." "Take some personal days," Ryan suggested. "Tell them you have a family emergency. It's not far from the truth. As for Marcus's daycare, a week's notice is standard for planned absences, isn't it?" Tasha nodded slowly, surprised by how thoroughly he'd thought this through. She watched as he pulled out a business card and began writing on the back. "This is my personal cell number," he said, handing her the card. "Not my office line, not my assistant's number, direct to me. Take some time to think about it. If you decide to accept, call or text anytime, day or night. I'll have everything arranged within an hour." Tasha took the card, running her thumb over the embossed letters of his name. The weight of the high-quality cardstock felt substantial in her hands, like a tangible piece of hope. "The security systems," she said hesitantly. "They're good?" Ryan's expression grew serious. "State-of-the-art. Multiple cameras covering every approach to the property, motion sensors, automated gates with biometric locks. The security team monitoring the feeds is the same one that protects my corporate headquarters. No one gets within a mile of that cabin without us knowing about it." The thoroughness of his answer loosened something in Tasha's chest. She looked down at the card again, then back up at Ryan. "I'll think about it," she said softly. "That's all I'm asking." He gestured toward the main entrance. "Would you like me to have my driver take you home?" Tasha shook her head quickly. "No, thank you. I need to walk, clear my head a bit." Ryan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Remember what I said. Day or night, the offer has no expiration date." As Tasha turned to leave, she felt the weight of the business card in her hand like a lifeline. Her mind was already racing, calculating possibilities. She could tell work she had a family emergency out of state. Marcus would love a week in the woods. He'd been begging to go camping since his friend Tommy went last summer. Jason would never think to look for them at a private cabin in the middle of nowhere. The practical part of her brain tried to raise red flags. This was crazy, wasn't it? Accepting help from a stranger, no matter how successful or seemingly trustworthy. But another voice, one that sounded suspiciously like hope, whispered that sometimes the craziest choices were the ones that changed everything. She pushed through the revolving door into the bright afternoon sunlight. The business card felt warm in her palm as she slipped it into her pocket. 1 week of peace. 1 week to think, to plan, to breathe without fear. 1 week that could change everything. The city bustled around her as she walked, her mind turning over every angle of Ryan's offer. Each step took her further from the building, but her thoughts remained in that elevator, replaying the genuine concern in Ryan's eyes, the careful way he'd listened without judgment. She couldn't remember the last time someone had offered her help without wanting something in return. A text message buzz from her phone made her jump. It was Jason, demanding to know where she was. Her hand started trembling as she read his angry words, threats barely veiled beneath a facade of concern. The weight of her situation crashed back over her like a wave, making it hard to breathe. She reached into her pocket, touching Ryan's business card like a talisman. Maybe this wasn't crazy. Maybe it was exactly what she and Marcus needed, a chance to step away, to think clearly without Jason's constant presence looming over them. 1 week to find their courage again. Her fingers traced the raised letters of Ryan's name as she walked, her mind already beginning to plan. She'd need to be careful, strategic. But for the first time in months, she felt something that seemed dangerously close to hope. Tasha's hands shook as she pulled her old blue duffel bag from the top shelf of her closet. Dust scattered in the afternoon light, streaming through her bedroom window. The bag had been up there since her last attempt to leave Jason, 6 months ago. That time, she'd only made it as far as her car before his manipulative words had drawn her back. But this time felt different. She moved methodically through her small apartment, selecting essentials with careful consideration. A week's worth of clothes, basic toiletries, her laptop and charger. Her fingers brushed against the business card in her pocket. Ryan's number was already saved in her phone, but she kept the card as a tangible reminder that this was real. Marcus's bedroom door stood open, his superhero bedspread perfectly made, a morning ritual he'd never skip. Tasha paused in the doorway, her heart heavy. The thought of leaving him behind, even for a week, made her chest ache. But the idea of taking him to a stranger's cabin, no matter how secure Ryan claimed it was, seemed equally impossible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, her closest friend since college. "Of course he can stay with us. Tommy will be thrilled. Sleepover for a whole week." Relief flooded through Tasha. Sarah understood her situation better than anyone. She'd been there through the worst of it, offering her couch on the nights when Jason's anger became too much to bear. Marcus loved spending time with Sarah's son, Tommy. They were in the same second-grade class and had been best friends since kindergarten. Another buzz. This one made her stomach clench. "Jason, where the hell are you? You better not be trying anything stupid." Tasha's hands trembled as she stared at the message. In the past, these kinds of texts would send her scrambling to respond, to placate, to explain. But something had shifted inside her during that elevator ride with Ryan. She pressed the power button on her phone, watching the screen go dark. Jason's threats disappeared into blackness. She zipped up her duffel bag with decisive finality. The sound echoed through the quiet apartment like a declaration of independence. Marcus would be at school for another 2 hours. She'd already called the office, citing a family emergency that would keep her away for a week. Her supervisor had been surprisingly understanding. Maybe her exhaustion had been more visible than she'd realized. Tasha took one last look around the apartment. Everything seemed strange, like she was seeing it through new eyes. The slight crack in the kitchen door frame, where Jason had slammed his fist last month. The bare walls where family photos used to hang. She'd taken them down after Jason complained they made the place look cluttered. The empty wine glass by the sink from last night, when she'd needed something to steady her nerves after another one of his talks. She shouldered her bag and headed for the door, then paused. On impulse, she went back to Marcus's room and picked up Mr. Whiskers, his favorite stuffed cat. The worn grey plush was missing one eye, but Marcus still couldn't sleep without it. She tucked it into her bag, a piece of home to hold on to during the week ahead. The drive to Sarah's house was familiar, a route she'd taken countless times for playdates and emergency escapes. Sarah was waiting on the front porch, her warm brown eyes full of concern. "You're doing the right thing," Sarah said, pulling Tasha into a tight hug. "You need this break. Time to think without him breathing down your neck." "I know." Tasha's voice wavered. "But leaving Marcus—" "Hey." Sarah held her at arm's length. "Marcus will be fine. Tommy's already planning their whole week. Something about a Lego championship tournament." She smiled. "And you know I'll protect him like he's my own." Tasha nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I've left Mr. Whiskers in my bag. Could you get it to him tonight? He won't sleep without it?" "Of course." Sarah squeezed her hand. "Now go. Take care of yourself for once. We've got this covered here." Back in her car, Tasha checked her phone. 3 more messages from Jason, each more demanding than the last. She turned the phone off completely this time, something she'd never dared to do before. The silence felt like freedom. The airport wasn't far. Ryan had texted earlier with instructions to meet him at the private aviation terminal, a world she'd never stepped foot in before. As she followed the signs, each turn felt like stepping further away from her old life and into something new. The security guard at the gate checked her ID against a list, then waved her through with a smile. She parked where directed, next to a sleek black SUV that probably cost more than she made in a year. Ryan was waiting outside the terminal building, his tall frame casual yet commanding in dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt. The businessman she'd met in the elevator was still there, but somehow softer around the edges. "You came," he said simply, and something in his voice made her throat tight. "I came," she agreed, grip tightening on her duffel bag. "The pilot's doing final checks now. We should be ready to take off in about 15 minutes. He gestured toward the building. "Would you like some coffee while we wait?" Tasha nodded, following him inside. The private terminal was all soft leather seats and polished wood, a world away from the crowded main terminal she was used to. As Ryan went to get their coffee, she stood at the window, watching a small jet with elegant lines sitting on the tarmac. A wave of emotion hit her. Hope, fear, uncertainty all mixed together. But mostly hope. It rose in her chest like a sunrise, warming places that had been cold for so long. Her phone stayed off in her pocket, Jason's demands unread and unanswered. For the first time in years, she was making a choice entirely for herself. The realization made her stand straighter, breathing deeper. Ryan returned with 2 cups of coffee, handing one to her. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Tasha looked out at the waiting plane, then back at him. The hope in her chest grew stronger. "Ready," she said, and meant it. The small jet touched down smoothly on a private airstrip nestled among towering pine trees. As they taxied to a stop, Tasha pressed her face against the window, taking in the endless expanse of forest stretching toward snow-capped mountains in the distance. The afternoon sun painted everything in warm, golden light, so different from the harsh city glare she'd left behind. "Welcome to my sanctuary," Ryan said softly as he helped her down the plane's stairs. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scent of pine needles and wild herbs. Tasha took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. A black Range Rover waited nearby, and Ryan loaded her bag into the trunk while she climbed into the passenger seat. The leather seats were butter soft, the interior somehow managing to feel both luxurious and cozy. "It's about 20 minutes to the cabin," Ryan explained as they pulled onto a winding mountain road. "The property is completely private, 500 acres of wilderness." Tasha watched the scenery roll past, mesmerized by the play of sunlight through the trees. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "So peaceful." Ryan smiled, his eyes on the road. "That's exactly why I bought it. Sometimes you need a place where you can just breathe." The road curved upward, and suddenly the trees opened up to reveal a stunning log cabin perched on the mountainside. But calling it a cabin felt like an understatement. The structure was masterfully crafted of massive timber logs with walls of windows and a wraparound deck that seemed to float above the valley below. "Oh my goodness," Tasha breathed as Ryan parked in front of the house. "This is incredible." "Wait until you see inside," he said, grabbing her bag before she could reach for it. "Let me give you the tour." The front door opened into a great room with soaring cathedral ceilings and a stone fireplace that stretched 2 stories high. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view that made Tasha's heart skip. Rolling mountains as far as the eye could see, painted in shades of green and blue. "The living room," Ryan said unnecessarily, gesturing to the plush leather couches and armchairs arranged around the fireplace. A thick wool rug in muted earth tones covered the wooden floor, and built-in bookshelves lined one wall. "The kitchen's through here," he continued, leading her into a space that would make professional chefs envious. Gleaming copper pots hung from a rack above a massive island, and every modern convenience was cleverly integrated into the rustic design. "I love to cook," Ryan admitted, running a hand along the marble countertop. "It helps me unwind after long days at the office." They moved through the rest of the first floor, a cozy den with another fireplace, a formal dining room, and a screened porch perfect for outdoor meals. Upstairs, Ryan showed her to her room, a peaceful retreat decorated in soft blues and creams. "The ensuite bathroom has a soaking tub with a view of the valley," he said, opening another door. "And this," he walked to a set of French doors, "is your private balcony." Tasha stepped out onto the small deck, overwhelmed by the beauty surrounding her. The late afternoon sun was painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, and a cool mountain breeze carried the sound of birds calling in the distance. "I'll let you get settled," Ryan said from the doorway. "Would you like to join me for dinner in about an hour? I thought I'd grill some steaks." "That sounds wonderful," Tasha replied, still gazing at the view. "Thank you, Ryan, for all of this." He nodded, something warm in his eyes, then left her alone with her thoughts. Tasha unpacked her small bag, hanging up the few clothes she'd brought in the walk-in closet that was bigger than her entire bathroom at home. The peaceful silence of the mountain wrapped around her like a comfortable blanket, so different from the constant tension she lived with in the city. After a long shower in the luxurious bathroom, she changed into fresh clothes and made her way downstairs. The smell of grilling meat drew her out to the deck, where Ryan stood at a massive built-in grill, a glass of red wine in his hand. Perfect timing. He smiled, handing her a glass of her own. "Dinner's almost ready." They ate at a small table on the deck, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The steaks were perfectly cooked, served with grilled vegetables and crusty bread. The conversation flowed easily, touching on their work, their childhoods, their dreams for the future. Ryan told funny stories about business deals gone wrong, and Tasha shared sweet moments about Marcus learning to ride his bike. As darkness fell, Ryan built a fire in the great room's massive fireplace. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls as they settled onto opposite ends of a deep leather couch. "Tell me more about Marcus," Ryan said softly, swirling the last of his wine in his glass. Tasha smiled, her heart aching a little at the thought of her son. "He's 8, so smart, always asking questions about everything. He loves science and space. He wants to be an astronaut." She paused, then added, "He's the reason I finally decided to leave Jason. I couldn't let him grow up thinking that's how relationships should be." Ryan nodded, his expression serious. "You're very brave, you know that?" "I don't feel brave," Tasha admitted, staring into the fire. "Most of the time I just feel scared." "That's what makes it brave," Ryan said quietly. "Doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified." Tasha felt tears prick at her eyes and quickly blinked them away. The day's emotional roller coaster was catching up with her, and she couldn't suppress a yawn. "You should get some rest," Ryan said, standing. "It's been a long day." Tasha nodded, suddenly exhausted. "Thank you for dinner, and for everything." "Sleep well, Tasha." Back in her room, Tasha changed into soft pajamas and slipped between the silky sheets. The mountain silence wrapped around her like a protective cocoon, broken only by the gentle whisper of wind in the pines. For the first time in years, she felt truly safe. As she drifted off to sleep, peaceful and warm, she had no way of knowing that back in the city, Jason was becoming increasingly frantic. He'd already been to her apartment, finding it empty. He'd called Sarah's house repeatedly, only to be told Tasha wasn't there. Now he sat in his car, scrolling through his contacts, determined to find someone who knew where she had gone. But up in the mountains, Tasha slept deeply and dreamlessly, while outside her window, the stars wheeled overhead in the vast, quiet night. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting warm patches across Tasha's bed. The gentle chorus of birdsong gradually pulled her from sleep, a natural alarm clock so different from the harsh electronic beeping she was used to. For a moment, she lay still, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then memory flooded back. The cabin. Ryan. Escape. She stretched languidly, appreciating the silky softness of the expensive sheets. The mattress was like sleeping on a cloud, and she realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd slept so deeply. No tossing and turning, no startling awake at every little sound, afraid it might be Jason coming home angry. Padding to the French doors, Tasha stepped out onto her private balcony. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine trees and wildflowers. Below, a small deer picked its way through the underbrush, pausing to nibble at leaves. The peaceful scene brought tears to her eyes. Happy ones for once. The sound of movement downstairs drew her attention. After a quick shower and change into comfortable clothes, she made her way to the kitchen, following the tempting aroma of coffee and something sweet baking. Ryan stood at the stove, dressed casually in jeans and a soft grey sweater that made him look more approachable than his usual business suits. He turned at her footsteps, offering a warm smile. "Good morning," he said, gesturing to the coffee maker. "Help yourself. There are mugs in the cabinet above." "Thanks," Tasha replied, breathing in the rich coffee scent. "Something smells amazing." "Cinnamon rolls," Ryan said, opening the oven to check on them. "My grandmother's recipe. She used to make them every Sunday morning when I was a kid." Tasha settled onto a stool at the kitchen island, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "You're close with your grandmother." "Was," Ryan corrected softly. "She passed away 5 years ago, but she practically raised me after my parents divorced. Mom had to work 2 jobs, so I spent most of my time at Grandma's house." "I'm sorry," Tasha said. "She sounds wonderful." "She was." Ryan pulled the golden brown rolls from the oven. "She taught me that cooking is a way of showing love. That's probably why I learned. I wanted to show her I loved her back." The simple honesty of his words touched something in Tasha's heart. This successful, powerful man wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, to show his softer side. It was so different from Jason, who saw any display of emotion as weakness. They settled at the kitchen table with plates of warm cinnamon rolls and fresh coffee. Through the windows, sunlight danced on the leaves of nearby trees, creating shifting patterns on the wooden floor. "Tell me about your childhood," Ryan said, breaking off a piece of his roll. "What was little Tasha like?" She laughed softly. "Oh, I was a handful, always climbing trees, scraping my knees, coming home covered in mud. My poor mum didn't know what to do with me. She wanted a little princess, but I was more interested in catching frogs than wearing dresses." "I can picture that." Ryan smiled. "What changed?" Tasha's smile faded slightly. "Growing up, I guess. Reality. Mom got sick when I was 15. Cancer. I had to grow up fast, learn to take care of her, keep the house running. She recovered, thank goodness, but I never really went back to being that carefree kid." Ryan reached across the table, briefly touching her hand. "That must have been hard." "It was," she admitted, "but it taught me to be strong, to handle whatever life throws at me. At least I thought it did." She stared into her coffee cup. "Until Jason. Do you want to talk about it?" Ryan's voice was gentle, non-pressuring. Tasha took a deep breath. "It started so gradually, you know? He was charming at first, attentive, made me feel special. But then came the little comments, the criticism. Nothing obvious enough to set off alarm bells, just constant tiny cuts to my self-esteem." She paused, gathering her thoughts. By the time I realized how controlling he'd become, I was already pregnant with Marcus. And then it got worse. He'd check my phone, question where I'd been, who I'd talked to, make me doubt myself, my memories, my perception of reality. "Gaslighting," Ryan said quietly. "Yeah." Tasha wiped away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "Sorry, I didn't mean to dump all this on you over breakfast." "Never apologize for telling your truth," Ryan said firmly. "What you've been through, it takes incredible strength to recognize it and try to change it." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, comforting and secure. But even as she felt herself relaxing in this peaceful moment, a familiar anxiety niggled at the back of her mind. What was Jason doing right now? Had he noticed she was gone? Was he looking for her? As if reading her thoughts, Ryan said, "You're safe here, Tasha. The property is gated with security cameras. No one can get up here without me knowing about it." She managed a small smile, grateful for his understanding. "Thank you. It's just hard to turn off the worry, you know?" "I know," he said softly. "But maybe for now, just for this moment, try to let it go. Be here, in this beautiful morning, eating slightly imperfect homemade cinnamon rolls." Tasha laughed despite herself. "They're not imperfect. They're delicious. See? That's the spirit. Ryan stood, gathering their empty plates. How about a walk? There's a beautiful trail that leads to a small lake. The morning light on the water is something special. Looking at him, this successful, powerful man who made cinnamon rolls from his grandmother's recipe and wanted to show her a beautiful view. Tasha felt something shift inside her. A tiny spark of hope, perhaps. Or maybe just the realization that not all men were like Jason, that genuine kindness existed in the world. "I'd like that," she said, standing to help with the dishes. For now, she would try to follow Ryan's advice. She would be here, in this moment, letting the peace of the mountain morning wash over her like the sunlight streaming through the windows. The birdsong continued outside, a sweet melody of freedom and possibility, and for the first time in years, Tasha felt like she could truly breathe. The morning sun climbed higher as Tasha and Ryan set out on the hiking trail. Pine needles crunched softly beneath their feet, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers. Tasha breathed deeply, savoring the clean mountain air, so different from the stuffy atmosphere of her apartment. "Watch your step here," Ryan said, offering his hand as they navigated around some exposed tree roots. His touch was gentle, steadying, nothing like Jason's controlling grip. "The trail gets a bit tricky in spots, but the view is worth it. I haven't been hiking since I was a kid," Tasha admitted, carefully picking her way along the path. "My dad used to take me camping sometimes before—" She trailed off, remembering those simpler days. "Before what?" Ryan asked softly. "Before he left. I was 12. Tasha surprised herself by sharing this. She rarely talked about her father's abandonment. One day he just didn't come home. Ryan was quiet for a moment. "My father was physically present, but emotionally absent," he said finally. "Always working, always pushing me to be better, stronger, more successful. Nothing was ever good enough." Tasha glanced at him, seeing vulnerability beneath his usual confident exterior. "Is that why you work so hard now?" He chuckled, but there was little humor in it. "Probably. That's what my therapist says anyway. Trying to prove something to someone who's not even paying attention anymore." They reached a small clearing, and Ryan suggested they take a break. They sat on a fallen log, sharing a water bottle and trail mix he'd packed. The forest around them was alive with bird calls and rustling leaves. "You know," Ryan said, picking through the trail mix for a chocolate piece, "you're the first person I've brought up here in years." "Really?" Tasha raised her eyebrows. "The famous Ryan Fields doesn't entertain guests at his mountain getaway?" He shook his head. "This place, it's my sanctuary, where I can just be myself, not the CEO everyone expects me to be." He met her eyes. "I've learned to keep people at a distance. It's safer that way." "Safer from what?" "Disappointment. Betrayal. Take your pick." He tossed a raisin into his mouth. "My last serious relationship ended badly. She was more interested in my bank account than me. After that, I decided it was easier to stay focused on work." Tasha understood that kind of self-protection all too well. "But isn't it lonely?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But then I meet someone who makes me question all my careful rules." The way he looked at her made her heart skip a beat. Tasha quickly looked away, focusing on a nearby butterfly. "The trail gets prettier up ahead?" she asked, changing the subject. Ryan smiled, accepting the deflection. "Much prettier. There's a lake that looks like glass on calm days." They continued hiking, and true to his word, the scenery became even more breathtaking. Wild roses bloomed along the path, and glimpses of snow-capped mountains peeked through the trees. As they walked, Their conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from favorite books to embarrassing childhood stories. "Wait till you see this," Ryan said as they rounded a bend. The trees opened up to reveal a pristine mountain lake, its surface reflecting the blue sky like a mirror. "What do you think?" "It's beautiful," Tasha breathed. They found a spot on the shore, and she slipped off her shoes to dip her toes in the cool water. "I come here to think sometimes," Ryan said, skipping a stone across the surface. "When business decisions get too complicated or the pressure feels too heavy." "And does it help?" "Usually. Puts things in perspective." He glanced at her. "Though lately I've been thinking less about business and more about other things." Tasha felt her cheeks warm, but before she could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. Seeing her friend's name on the screen, she answered. "Tasha, thank God." Her friend's voice was urgent. "Jason's been asking everyone where you are. He showed up at my place this morning, demanding to know if Marcus was with me. He's furious, Tasha. I've never seen him like this." The peaceful feeling that had been building all day shattered. Tasha's hands began to shake. Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not, but he's not giving up. He's calling everyone, showing up at places you might be. He even went to your work." Ryan must have seen the change in her expression, because he moved closer, his presence solid and reassuring. "Thanks for letting me know," Tasha managed to say before ending the call. The beautiful lake now seemed threatening, its depths dark and unknown. The forest that had felt magical earlier now seemed full of hiding places where Jason could be lurking. "Tasha?" Ryan's voice was gentle. "What happened?" She told him about the call, her words tumbling out in a rush. "He's looking for me. He's angry. What if he finds this place? What if he figures out where I am? He's always been good at that, at finding things out, at—" "Hey," Ryan interrupted her spiral, taking her trembling hands in his. "Remember what I said this morning? This property is secure. The gate has a security code that changes daily. There are cameras. No one gets up here without my knowledge. But no buts. You're safe here." His voice was firm but kind. "Jason can't hurt you here." Tasha wanted to believe him, but years of experience with Jason's persistence made it hard. She'd seen him track down old friends who'd moved away, find information that should have been private, show up at places he shouldn't have known about. "You don't know him," she whispered. "When he sets his mind to something, and you don't know me." Ryan countered. "I protect what matters to me, Tasha, and right now, that includes you." His words should have comforted her, but they also scared her in a different way. Because despite her best efforts to keep her walls up, she was starting to care about Ryan too. And caring about someone had only ever led to pain. The sun that had seemed so bright and promising earlier now felt exposed, revealing. Every snapping twig in the forest made her jump. The peaceful sanctuary of the mountain retreat had been pierced by the reality of her situation, and Tasha wondered if she'd ever truly be free of Jason's shadow. Ryan seemed to sense her growing anxiety. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's head back to the cabin. We can make lunch, and I'll show you exactly how the security system works. Would that help?" Tasha nodded, grateful for his understanding. As they started back down the trail, she stayed closer to Ryan than before, drawing strength from his steady presence. But the carefree feeling of the morning was gone, replaced by the familiar weight of fear and uncertainty. The forest seemed different now, closing in around them instead of welcoming them. Every shadow held potential threats, every rustle of leaves made her heart race. The peace she'd found earlier felt like a distant dream, shattered by the harsh reality of her situation. The walk back to the cabin felt longer than it had earlier that morning. Every few steps, Tasha found herself glancing over her shoulder, expecting to see Jason's angry face emerge from between the trees. Ryan stayed close, his hand occasionally brushing against her back in silent support. Inside the cabin, Ryan immediately went to work, pulling up the security system's interface on his tablet. See these red dots? Those are the motion sensors. Nothing bigger than a deer can get within half a mile without us knowing. His voice was steady, but Tasha noticed the slight crease between his eyebrows, the way his jaw tensed when he spoke. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shaking. I've seen him get past security systems before. He has ways. Ryan set the tablet down and turned to face her fully. Tasha, look at me. He waited until she met his eyes. I understand you're scared, but I need you to trust me when I say that I will not let anything happen to you. The intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. For a moment, she could almost believe him, almost feel safe. But then her phone buzzed again, and though she didn't check it, the mere sound sent her heart racing. Ryan watched her reaction and made a decision. We're not staying here tonight. What, but... I have a friend who owns a lodge about 20 minutes from here. It's more secure, with round-the-clock staff and better surveillance. We'll go there until I can make some calls, set up additional security. Tasha hesitated. I don't want to cause more trouble. You've already done so much. This isn't trouble, Ryan said firmly. This is keeping you safe. He paused, running a hand through his hair. I know we haven't known each other long, but He stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. Your safety matters to me, more than I expected it would. The confession hung in the air between them. Tasha felt her heart flutter, but years of conditioning made her step back, cross her arms tighter. Ryan, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. Just let me help, please. They packed quickly, throwing essential items into their bags. Ryan moved with efficient purpose, making calls as he gathered their things. Tasha could hear fragments of his conversations, something about security protocols, background checks, surveillance upgrades. The drive to the lodge was tense. Ryan kept checking the rearview mirror, though he tried to be subtle about it. Tasha sat with her hands clasped in her lap, watching the shadows lengthen across the mountain road. The lodge appeared around a bend, a sprawling structure of stone and wood that somehow managed to look both imposing and welcoming. A security guard met them at the gate, exchanging quiet words with Ryan before waving them through. The owner is an old friend, Ryan explained as they parked. He's given us his best suite, complete privacy, separate entrance, and direct access to security if needed. The suite was beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains and a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. Under different circumstances, Tasha might have been overwhelmed by the luxury. Now she just felt grateful for the solid walls and the guard she could see patrolling outside. You should try to rest, Ryan said softly. I'll be right out here if you need anything. Tasha nodded, but as she turned toward the bedroom, she stopped. Ryan. When he looked at her, she struggled to find the right words. Thank you for everything. I'm not good at this. At accepting help, at trusting people. Jason made sure of that. Ryan's expression softened. I know, and I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. Just let me help keep you safe. The rest can come later if you want it to. The gentleness in his voice made her eyes sting with tears. Part of her wanted to cross the room, to let herself be held, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have something good in her life. But the larger part, the part shaped by years of manipulation and fear, held her back. Good night, Ryan, she whispered, retreating to the bedroom before she could change her mind. Through the door, she heard him sigh softly. Good night, Tasha. Sweet dreams. She sat on the edge of the bed, listening to his footsteps as he moved around the suite, checking windows and doors. The care in his actions made her chest ache. It had been so long since someone had wanted to protect her, to keep her safe. The feeling was both wonderful and terrifying. Outside, the mountain night settled in, stars appearing one by one above the trees. Tasha watched them through the window, thinking about the day's events, the peaceful morning hike that seemed so long ago now, the fear that had shattered their tranquility, and Ryan's unwavering support through it all. She wanted to trust him. Maybe, she realized with a start, she already did, more than she was ready to admit. But trust meant vulnerability, and vulnerability had always led to pain. So she stayed in the bedroom, her back against the headboard, listening to the quiet sounds of Ryan keeping watch, and tried to convince her heart to be as cautious as her mind. The mountain night had settled into a deep quiet, broken only by the soft whisper of wind through the pines. Inside the lodge suite, Tasha had finally dozed off, though her sleep was restless. Ryan sat in the main room, his laptop casting a blue glow across his face as he worked, occasionally glancing at the security feeds on his phone. At 11:37, the crunch of tires on gravel caught his attention. He moved to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. A dark sedan had pulled into the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan's jaw tightened as a familiar figure stepped out. Jason. Before Ryan could move, angry footsteps thundered up the wooden stairs to their private entrance. The pounding on the door echoed through the suite like gunshots. "Tasha!" Jason's voice boomed. "I know you're in there. Open this door right now." In the bedroom, Tasha jolted awake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The sound of Jason's voice sent ice through her veins. She scrambled out of bed, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grab her phone. Ryan was already moving, his voice low and steady. "Stay in the bedroom, Tasha. I'll handle this." "You can't hide from me." Jason continued his assault on the door. "You're tearing our family apart. What about Marcus? Have you even thought about our son?" Tasha pressed herself against the bedroom wall, tears streaming down her face. The mention of Marcus cut deep. Jason knew exactly how to hurt her most. Ryan opened the door, his tall frame filling the entrance. His usual polished business demeanor had been replaced by something harder, more dangerous. "That's enough," he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of commanding boardrooms. Jason tried to push past him, but Ryan didn't budge. "Get out of my way," Jason snarled. "This is between me and my family." "No." Ryan's response was simple but firm. "You lost any right to call them your family when you chose to abuse and manipulate them." Jason's face contorted with rage. "Who do you think you are? Some rich guy who thinks he can swoop in and play hero? You don't know anything about us." "I know enough." Ryan's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the calm. "I know that Tasha is terrified of you. I know that you've used your son as a weapon to control her, and I know that this ends tonight. You can't stop me from seeing my son. Actually," Ryan pulled out his phone, "I can help Tasha ensure that any contact you have with Marcus goes through proper legal channels. I have the best family law attorneys in the country on speed dial, and they're very interested in documenting your pattern of emotional abuse." Jason's face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly. "You're bluffing. Try me." Ryan took a step forward, his voice dropping lower. "I've already started building a case. Every threat, every manipulative message, every time you've used Marcus to control Tasha, it's all documented. You're going to leave now, and you're going to stop harassing Tasha, or I will make sure you regret it." In the bedroom, Tasha listened, her heart pounding. She'd never heard anyone stand up to Jason like this, never seen anyone match his intimidation with such calm strength. "You think you can threaten me?" Jason's voice cracked slightly. It's not a threat, it's a promise. Ryan's words were measured, precise. I protect what matters to me, Jason. And right now, that's Tasha and Marcus's safety and peace of mind. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave. You're going to stop trying to control and manipulate Tasha. Any communication about Marcus will go through proper legal channels. If you violate any of these terms, I will use every resource at my disposal to ensure you face consequences. The silence that followed was deafening. Tasha could practically feel the tension crackling through the air. Finally, Jason spoke, his voice tight with suppressed rage. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Ryan replied. Security is already on their way up. Make the smart choice, Jason. The sound of heavy footsteps approached, and Tasha heard Jason curse under his breath. A moment later, she heard him moving away, his footsteps fading down the stairs. Through the window, she watched his car's taillights disappear into the night. When Ryan entered the bedroom, Tasha was sitting on the edge of the bed, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. He knelt in front of her, his face soft with concern. Are you okay? He asked gently. Tasha nodded, though tears still streaked her cheeks. No one's ever stood up to him like that before. Ryan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, and took her hands in his. You don't have to face him alone anymore, he said quietly. I meant what I said out there. I will do whatever it takes to keep you and Marcus safe. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why would you do all this for me? Ryan was quiet for a moment, his thumbs tracing gentle circles on her palms. Because in the short time I've known you, I've seen your strength, your kindness, your determination to protect your son. Because you deserve to feel safe, to be happy. And because... He paused, seeming to gather his courage. Because I care about you, Tasha. More than I expected to, more than I probably should, given how little time we've known each other. But I do. Tasha felt something crack inside her chest. Not the shattering she was used to with Jason, but more like the breaking of a dam, releasing feelings she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. I care about you too, she whispered, her voice trembling. And that terrifies me. I know, Ryan said softly. We can take it slow. Right now, let's just focus on keeping you safe, okay? Tasha nodded, feeling simultaneously exhausted and more awake than she'd ever been. The night's events had left her shaken, but Ryan's presence was like an anchor, steady and strong. He stood up, still holding her hands. Try to get some rest. I'll be right outside if you need anything. As he turned to leave, Tasha tightened her grip on his hands. Ryan. When he looked back, she managed a small smile. Thank you. For everything. He squeezed her hands gently before letting go. Always, he promised, and somehow, Tasha knew he meant it. The drive back to the cabin was quiet, with the moon casting long shadows through the trees. Tasha watched the darkness slip past her window, her mind replaying the confrontation with Jason over and over. Ryan's steady presence beside her kept her grounded, but as the initial adrenaline wore off, a familiar heaviness settled in her chest. When they arrived, Ryan unlocked the cabin door and switched on the warm lights. The cozy interior should have felt welcoming, but Tasha couldn't shake the growing unease in her stomach. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped around herself, feeling suddenly out of place in this beautiful retreat. Would you like some tea? Ryan asked, his voice gentle. Tasha nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as he moved efficiently through the kitchen, filling the kettle and pulling 2 mugs from the cabinet. Such simple, normal actions, yet they felt foreign after the chaos of the evening. You don't have to stay up with me, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. You've already done so much. Too much, really. Ryan paused in his preparations, turning to face her, Tasha, look at me. She lifted her eyes reluctantly to meet his. You're not a burden, he said firmly, as if reading her thoughts. Nothing about helping you is too much. Tears pricked at her eyes, and she looked away. But that's exactly what I am. A burden, a mess. I've dragged you into my drama, put you in danger. Her voice cracked. You have this amazing life, this successful business, and I'm just someone running from her mistakes. The kettle whistled, and Ryan prepared their tea with careful movements before leading her to the comfortable sofa. They sat down, and he handed her a steaming mug. First of all, he said, his voice steady, you haven't dragged me anywhere. Every choice I've made has been my own. And second, he paused, considering his words. I see strength in you, Tasha. The kind of strength that comes from surviving something incredibly difficult and still managing to keep your heart open. She stared into her tea, watching the steam rise. Sometimes I don't feel strong at all. That's exactly what makes you strong, Ryan replied. You keep going, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. The warmth from the mug seeped into her hands, and something in Ryan's words seemed to unlock something inside her. The story she'd kept bottled up for so long began to spill out. I met Jason when I was 22. She began softly. He was charming, confident, everything I thought I wanted. The first few months were like a fairy tale. He bought me flowers, surprised me with romantic dinners, made me feel special. Ryan listened intently, his presence steady and supportive. But then things started to change. Small things at first. He'd get upset if I spent time with friends. He'd check my phone, saying he was just worried about me. He'd make little comments about my clothes, my weight, my choices. Tasha took a shaky breath. By the time I realized what was happening, I was already pregnant with Marcus. She described how Jason's control had tightened after Marcus was born. How he'd used their son as leverage, threatening to take him away if she didn't comply with his demands. How he'd isolated her from friends and family, making her dependent on him. The worst part wasn't the obvious control. She continued, her voice thick with emotion. It was the way he made me doubt myself. Every decision, every thought, every feeling. He made me question all of it. He had this way of twisting things around until I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Ryan's hand found hers, offering silent support as she continued. I started keeping a journal, hiding it where he wouldn't find it. It helped me hold on to reality when he tried to convince me I was remembering things wrong or being too sensitive. That journal, it probably saved my life. It helped me see the pattern, helped me realize I wasn't crazy. She described the day she'd finally decided to leave, how she'd been planning it for months, secretly saving money and gathering important documents. But even now, even knowing how toxic he was, there's this voice in my head, his voice, telling me I'm not good enough, that I don't deserve peace or happiness. Ryan shifted slightly, turning to face her more fully. That voice is wrong, he said firmly. You deserve every bit of peace and happiness you can find. And what's more, you've earned it. Every step you've taken to protect yourself and Marcus, every time you've chosen to keep going despite the fear, that's not weakness, Tasha. That's incredible strength. His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in years, Tasha felt truly seen. Not as a victim, not as a problem to be solved, but as someone worthy of respect and admiration. I look at you, Ryan continued, his voice soft but certain, and I see someone who's faced incredible challenges but hasn't let them harden her heart. You're still kind, still capable of trust and love, even after everything you've been through. That's not just strength, that's courage. Tasha felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but for once they weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of release, of recognition, of finally feeling understood. Ryan gently squeezed her hand. "You're not alone anymore, Tasha. Whatever comes next, whatever challenges we face, you don't have to face them by yourself." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, their tea growing cold, but neither seemed to mind. The cabin's warmth enveloped them, and for the first time since leaving the city, Tasha felt truly at peace. Not because all her problems were solved, but because she finally believed she had the strength and the support to face them. The days at the cabin took on a gentle rhythm. Mornings began with shared coffee on the wraparound porch, watching the sun paint the sky in soft pinks and golds. Ryan would prepare breakfast, nothing fancy, just eggs and toast. But there was something intimate about the way he remembered exactly how she liked her coffee, or how he'd slide an extra piece of bacon onto her plate with a quiet smile. Their conversations flowed easier now, like a stream finding its natural course. They talked about everything and nothing. Their favorite books, childhood memories, dreams they'd tucked away. Ryan told her about his first business venture, a lemonade stand that failed because he'd made the drinks too sour. Tasha shared stories about Marcus's first steps, his favorite bedtime stories, the way he tried to negotiate for extra dessert like a tiny lawyer. During the afternoons, they'd take walks through the surrounding woods. Ryan showed her his favorite spots, a clearing filled with wildflowers, a fallen log that made a perfect bench overlooking the valley. Sometimes they'd sit there for hours just talking or sharing comfortable silence. Tasha found herself noticing little things about Ryan. The way his eyes crinkled when he really smiled, how he ran his hand through his hair when he was thinking deeply, the gentle way he listened when she spoke, as if every word mattered. She caught him watching her too, when he thought she wasn't looking, with a softness in his expression that made her heart flutter. But each time she felt herself drawing closer, a voice in her head would whisper warnings. She'd pull back, reminding herself that this wasn't her world. Ryan's life was filled with board meetings and business deals, not grocery shopping and helping with homework. She was a single mom with emotional baggage, and he was Ryan Fields. One evening, they sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Ryan had brought out blankets against the evening chill, and their shoulders touched as they swayed gently back and forth. "I never thought I'd enjoy just being still," Ryan admitted, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. "My whole life has been about moving forward, chasing the next goal. But here, with you." He trailed off, leaving the thought hanging in the air between them. Tasha's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Her heart leapt when she saw it was Marcus calling. "Hey, sweetie," she answered, her voice warm with love. "Mommy!" Marcus's excited voice filled the line. "I lost another tooth, and I made a robot at school today with boxes and tin foil." "That's amazing, baby! Did you save the tooth for the tooth fairy?" "Uh-huh. Sarah helped me put it in a special envelope." Sarah was Tasha's friend who was watching Marcus. "When are you coming home, Mummy? I miss you." Tasha's throat tightened. "I miss you too, sweetheart. So much." She realized with a start that she'd been at the cabin for over a week now, longer than she'd initially planned. "I'll be home soon, okay?" "Is Mr. Ryan still there?" Marcus asked innocently. Tasha glanced at Ryan, who was pretending not to listen, but clearly was. "Yes, he is. Can I talk to him, please?" She hesitated, then held out the phone to Ryan. "Marcus wants to say hi." Ryan took the phone, his expression softening. "Hey, buddy. How's that robot coming along?" As Ryan listened to Marcus's excited description of his creation, Tasha watched his face. He asked questions, laughed at Marcus's jokes, and showed genuine interest in everything the boy said. Something warm unfurled in her chest at the sight. Then Marcus said something that made both adults freeze. "Sarah says you're nice to my mummy. Are you going to be my daddy now? Because Tommy at school has 2 daddies, and I don't have any, and you're nice like a daddy should be." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan's eyes met Tasha's, wide with surprise. She felt her cheeks burning, mortified and uncertain. Ryan stumbled over his words, something Tasha had never heard him do before. "Marcus, sweetie." Tasha cut in, taking the phone back with trembling hands. "It's getting late. Why don't you tell me about what you had for dinner?" But the moment hung in the air between them, even after they'd said goodbye to Marcus and ended the call. The easy comfort they'd shared earlier had shifted into something more complicated, filled with unspoken questions and possibilities neither was ready to address. Ryan cleared his throat. "He's a great kid," he said finally, his voice gentle. "He is." Tasha agreed softly. "And he doesn't. I've never—" She struggled to find the right words. "I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable." "It didn't," Ryan said quickly, then more quietly. "It didn't make me uncomfortable at all." Their eyes met in the gathering darkness, and Tasha felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in Ryan's expression she couldn't quite read, something that both thrilled and terrified her. The porch swing continued its gentle motion, and somewhere in the distance, a whippoorwill called. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken words and uncertain possibilities, neither quite ready to bridge the gap that Marcus's innocent words had created. Tasha sat at the cabin's kitchen table, staring at her, phone as if it might explode. The email from Jason's lawyer had arrived 10 minutes ago, but she still couldn't bring herself to believe what she was reading. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down, her vision blurring with unshed tears. "What's wrong?" Ryan asked from across the table, his coffee forgotten as he noticed her distress. The morning sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to mock the darkness settling over her heart. "Jason," she whispered, her voice catching. He's filing for full custody of Marcus." The words felt like broken glass in her throat. "His lawyer says I'm an unfit mother because I abandoned my son to run away with a strange man." Ryan's face hardened, but his voice remained gentle. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her phone. She nodded, pushing it toward him. As he read, Tasha wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold back the panic threatening to overwhelm her. "He's twisting everything," she said, her voice shaking, "making it sound like I'm unstable, irresponsible. He's using this week against me, saying I chose a man over my son." Ryan set the phone down carefully, his jaw tight. "This is nothing but manipulation, Tasha. He's trying to regain control the only way he has left, through Marcus. But what if it works?" The tears finally spilled over. What if a judge believes him? Jason can be so convincing when he wants to be. He'll tell them how I ran away, how I left Marcus with a friend to go stay with a man I barely knew. Oh God, what was I thinking? Ryan moved around the table, kneeling beside her chair. "You were thinking about surviving," he said firmly. "About finding a safe space to breathe and think clearly for the first time in years. There's nothing wrong with that." "But a judge won't see it that way," Tasha whispered. "They'll see a mother who abandoned her child." "No." Ryan's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "They'll see a mother who did whatever she needed to do to protect herself and her son from an abusive situation. And I'll make sure of it." Tasha looked at him, confusion cutting through her panic. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have connections to some of the best family law attorneys in the state, people who specialize in cases involving domestic abuse." He took her hands in his touch warm and steady. "Let me help you fight this, Tasha." "I can't ask you to do that," she protested. "You've already done so much. You're not asking, I'm offering." His blue eyes held hers, fierce and determined. Jason doesn't get to win. Not this time. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but these were different. Tears of relief, of gratitude, of something deeper she wasn't ready to name. "Thank you," she whispered. Ryan pulled out his phone, his CEO persona sliding into place. "I'm calling Caroline Porter. She's the best family law attorney I know, and she owes me a favor." He paused, looking at Tasha. "Is it okay if I tell her everything?" Tasha nodded, watching as he made the call. His voice was confident, authoritative, so different from the gentle way he spoke to her. He outlined the situation clearly, not missing a single detail. Within an hour, they were sitting in Caroline Porter's office in the city. The attorney was a sharp-featured woman in her 50s, with kind eyes that belied her no-nonsense demeanor. She listened intently as Tasha recounted her history with Jason, taking detailed notes. "Do you have any documentation of the abuse?" Caroline asked gently. Tasha's heart sank. "Not much. Jason was careful. It was mostly emotional, psychological. The few times it got physical, he made sure not to leave marks." "Text messages," Caroline prompted. "Emails, witnesses to his behavior." Yes," Tasha realized. "I saved some of his texts, and my friend Sarah, the one watching Marcus, she's seen how he acts, how he treats us." Caroline nodded approvingly. "Good. That's a start. What about Marcus? Has Jason ever been violent with him?" "No," Tasha said quickly. "But Marcus has seen, he's witnessed Jason's outbursts, the way he talks to me, the way he throws things when he's angry. Marcus gets so scared." Her voice broke. Ryan's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "That's relevant," Caroline said, making another note. "Children witnessing domestic abuse is considered a form of child abuse in itself. Now, about this week at the cabin, we need to frame this correctly. You took time to ensure your mental health and safety, leaving your son in the care of a trusted friend. That's not abandonment. That's responsible parenting." Tasha felt a weight lift from her chest. "Really? Absolutely. And Mr. Fields?" Caroline turned to Ryan. "You're willing to testify about the circumstances that led to offering Tasha the use of your cabin?" "Of course," Ryan said without hesitation. "I'll do whatever's needed." They spent the next 2 hours going over strategy, gathering evidence, and preparing for what was to come. By the time they left Caroline's office, Tasha felt stronger, more hopeful. "We have a good case," Caroline had assured them. "Jason's attempt to use your brief absence against you will likely backfire. It shows a pattern of controlling behavior that the court won't look kindly on." In the car ride back to the cabin, Tasha was quiet, processing everything. Ryan glanced at her occasionally, concern evident in his expression. "What are you thinking?" he asked finally. "I'm thinking about Marcus," she said softly. "About how much I miss him, about how scared he must be, even though Sarah's doing her best to shield him from all this." Ryan was quiet for a moment. "Why don't you bring him to the cabin?" he suggested. "There's plenty of room, and it might be good for him to be away from the situation for a while." Tasha's heart leaped at the idea, but uncertainty held her back. "Are you sure? Having a 7-year-old around would change things?" "Change them for the better," Ryan said, firmly. "This place should be filled with family, with laughter. It's been empty for too long." The word family hung in the air between them, carrying weight and possibility. Tasha thought about Marcus's words on the phone, about Ryan being like a daddy. She looked at the man beside her, this powerful CEO who had stepped into their lives like a guardian angel, who had shown nothing but kindness and respect, who looked at her son with genuine care in his eyes. "Okay," she said softly. I'll call Sarah and arrange it." Ryan's smile was bright enough to chase away the shadows of the day. "Good. We'll stop for groceries on the way back. Stock up on all the things kids like." As they drove, Tasha felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, the uncertainty about the legal battle ahead, but it no longer felt overwhelming. She had support now, not just emotional, but practical. She had someone in her corner who wasn't afraid to face Jason, who had resources and connections to help her fight back. More than that, she had someone who saw her strength even when she couldn't see it herself. Someone who understood that taking care of herself wasn't selfish, that asking for help wasn't weak. Someone who looked at her and Marcus not as burdens to be carried, but as people to be cherished. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, Tasha truly believed she could win this fight, not just for herself, but for Marcus, for the chance to give him the peaceful, loving home he deserved. The morning of the court hearing dawned cold and grey. Tasha stood in front of her mirror, smoothing down her navy blue blazer for the 100th time. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the collar, and she could see the dark circles under her eyes, despite her careful makeup. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours the night before. "You look perfect." Ryan's voice came from the doorway of her bedroom at the cabin. He was already dressed in a crisp charcoal suit, his presence as steady and reassuring as ever. "I feel like I'm going to be sick," Tasha admitted, pressing a hand to her churning stomach. What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if Jason convinces them I'm an unfit mother?" Ryan crossed the room in 3 strides, placing his hands on her shoulders and turning her to face him. "That's not going to happen. We have evidence, Tasha. We have witnesses. Most importantly, we have the truth." Tears welled up in her eyes. "But Jason can be so convincing. You've seen how charming he can be when he wants to. And I've also seen how that charm disappears the moment things don't go his way." Ryan reminded her gently. "The judge will see through it too." A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Sarah, bringing Marcus back from his sleepover. The little boy ran straight into his mother's arms, and Tasha held him tight, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo. "Mummy, why are you dressed so fancy?" Marcus asked, looking up at her with curious eyes. Tasha knelt down to his level, smoothing his unruly hair. "Remember how we talked about going to see the judge today? About making sure you and I can stay together safely?" Marcus nodded solemnly. "Away from Daddy when he gets mad?" "That's right, sweetheart." Tasha's heart clenched at the understanding in her son's young eyes. No 7-year-old should have to understand such things. Sarah stepped forward. "We'll have a great day together, won't we, Marcus? We can build that new Lego set while your mom takes care of some grown-up stuff." The drive to the courthouse felt endless. Ryan sat beside Tasha in the back of his car, his driver navigating through morning traffic. Their lawyer, Caroline, had sent a text confirming she was already there, reviewing their documentation one final time. "Remember," Ryan said softly, "you're not alone in this. I'll be right there in that courtroom. So will Caroline and Sarah and everyone else who knows the truth about Jason." Tasha nodded, clutching her folder of evidence. Screenshots of threatening texts, photos of broken items from Jason's rages, documentation of every incident she could remember. The weight of those papers felt like lead in her hands. The courthouse loomed before them, its stone facade stern and imposing. As they climbed the steps, Tasha spotted Jason arriving with his lawyer. He was wearing his most expensive suit, his hair perfectly styled, looking every bit the successful businessman he portrayed himself as. Their eyes met briefly, and his lip curled in that familiar sneer that always preceded his worst moments. Ryan's hand pressed against her lower back, steadying her. "Keep walking," he murmured. He can't hurt you anymore." Inside the courtroom, Tasha sat between Ryan and Carolyn, trying to keep her breathing steady as the proceedings began. The judge, a woman in her 50s with steel-grey hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the initial documentation. Jason's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a devoted father concerned about his son's welfare. He spoke of Tasha's abandonment when she went to the cabin, questioning her stability and decision-making. With each word, Tasha felt herself shrinking, old doubts creeping back in. Then it was Caroline's turn. She stood, calm and collected, and began methodically dismantling Jason's facade. She presented the text messages, each one revealing his controlling nature. She called Sarah to testify about the times Tasha and Marcus had shown up at her door, scared and seeking refuge. She even had documentation from Marcus's school counselor, noting the child's anxiety and fearful behavior after witnessing his father's outbursts. When it was Tasha's turn to speak, her legs felt like jelly as she made her way to the witness stand. But as she began to talk, something shifted inside her. Years of suppressed truth came pouring out, the constant criticism, the manipulation, the way Jason would throw things at walls but never at her, knowing it would leave no marks for others to see. "He told me I was worthless," she said, her voice growing stronger, "that no one else would ever want me, that I couldn't survive without him. He said I was lucky he put up with me, that I should be grateful he stayed. When I got the promotion at work, he told me I must have slept my way into it, because I wasn't smart enough to earn it any other way." She described how Jason would check her phone, question her about every minute spent away from home, show up at her workplace unannounced to surprise her, really to check up on her. How he would use Marcus as a weapon, threatening to take him away if she ever left. "The week I spent at Mr. Field's cabin wasn't abandonment," she said firmly, meeting the judge's eyes. "It was the first time in years I could breathe without feeling afraid. Marcus was safe with my best friend, and I finally had space to realize that what was happening to us wasn't normal, wasn't okay, that we deserved better." Throughout her testimony, she could feel Ryan's steady presence, his unwavering support giving her strength. Even when Jason's lawyer tried to twist her words, suggesting she was unstable or attention-seeking, she held firm to her truth. The judge called a brief recess to review all the evidence. Those 15 minutes felt like an eternity. Ryan brought Tasha a cup of water, his hand brushing hers as he passed it over. "You're doing amazingly," he whispered. "Just a little longer." When the judge returned, her expression was serious. She looked directly at Jason as she began to speak. "Mr. Peterson, I have seen many cases like this over my years on the bench. I have learned to recognize the patterns of emotional and psychological abuse, even when they leave no physical marks. The evidence presented here today shows a clear pattern of controlling and abusive behavior on your part." Tasha hardly dared to breathe as the judge continued. "Therefore, I am granting full custody of Marcus Peterson to his mother, Tasha Williams. Mr. Peterson, you are hereby ordered to maintain a distance of at least 100 yards from both Ms. Williams and your son. Any contact must be arranged through the court-appointed liaison. Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order." The rest of the judge's words blurred as relief flooded through Tasha's body. She was vaguely aware of Jason's outburst, of him being restrained by his lawyer as he shouted threats, but none of it could touch her. Ryan's arm was around her shoulders, and she was safe. She was free. As they left the courthouse, Ryan pulled her close. "It's over," he said softly. "You did it. You and Marcus are safe now." Tasha looked up at him, seeing all the pride and care in his eyes. "We did it," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this without you." The sky had cleared while they were inside, and sunlight streamed down on them as they descended the courthouse steps. Tasha thought about Marcus, waiting at Sarah's house, about how she could finally tell him they were truly safe, about how they could begin building a new life, free from fear and full of possibility. After leaving the courthouse, Ryan suggested they take a drive. The afternoon sun painted the mountains in soft golden hues as they wound their way up to a scenic overlook. Tasha felt lighter than she had in years, as if the weight of her past had finally lifted from her shoulders. Ryan parked the car, and they walked to the wooden railing at the edge of the overlook. Below them, the valley stretched out like a patchwork quilt of greens and browns, dotted with tiny houses and threading rivers. "I can't believe it's really over," Tasha said softly, wrapping her arms around herself against the cool mountain breeze. Ryan moved closer, offering his warmth. "You were incredible in there. So brave." Tasha turned to face him, her heart pounding. The setting sun caught the edges of his hair, turning it to copper, and his eyes were soft with emotion. "Ryan, I need to tell you something." He waited patiently as she gathered her courage. "These past weeks, everything you've done for me and Marcus, it's meant more than I can say. But it's not just gratitude I'm feeling." She took a deep breath. "I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them for a moment. Then Ryan's face broke into a warm smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said softly. "Because I fell in love with you too, somewhere between that stuck elevator and watching you fight for your freedom today." He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You've shown me what real strength looks like, Tasha. You've opened my heart in ways I never thought possible." They stood there together, looking out over the mountains, their fingers intertwined as the sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was a quiet moment, but it held all the promise of new beginnings. The key turned in the lock of Tasha's apartment door, and Marcus burst inside, his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. "Home," he exclaimed, his voice filled with joy. Tasha smiled, setting down their bags and taking a deep breath. Being home felt different now. Safer, warmer somehow. A gentle knock at the door made Marcus's eyes light up. "Is that Ryan?" he asked excitedly. Tasha opened the door to find Ryan standing there, his arms full of wrapped packages. "I thought someone might like a welcome home surprise," Ryan said, his eyes twinkling as Marcus bounced on his toes. "Are those for me?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with wonder. Ryan nodded, setting the gifts down on the coffee table. "I thought maybe we could all use something special today." As Marcus carefully unwrapped each present, books, art supplies, and a remote control car he'd mentioned wanting, Tasha watched the scene unfold with tears in her eyes. Ryan moved to stand beside her, taking her hand in his. "Tasha," he said softly, "these past weeks have shown me what I've been missing in my life. I want to be part of your family, both of yours." His voice was steady, but she could hear the emotion behind his words. Marcus looked up from his new treasures. "Like a real dad?" he asked hopefully. Ryan knelt down to Marcus's level. "If that's okay with you, buddy, I'd like to be here for both you and your mom." Marcus threw his arms around Ryan's neck, and Tasha felt her heart swell with emotion. This was what peace felt like, what safety and love felt like. As she watched her son and Ryan together, she knew this was the fresh start she'd been hoping for, the beginning of something beautiful and real. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, warming the apartment as they sat together, talking and laughing, a family coming together at last. The evening settled into a comfortable rhythm as Tasha, Ryan, and Marcus sat together on their well-worn couch. Marcus nestled between them, still clutching his new remote control car, his eyes heavy with contentment. The soft glow of the setting sun painted the living room in warm hues, reflecting the peace that had finally found its way into their lives. Tasha watched as Ryan showed Marcus how to operate his new toy, their heads bent together in concentration. The sight made her heart flutter. This was what family was supposed to feel like. The fear and uncertainty that had shadowed her life for so long had been replaced by something stronger, something beautiful. She thought about how far they'd come since that chance meeting in the elevator. What had started as an act of kindness from a stranger had blossomed into the kind of love she'd always hoped existed, but never thought she'd find. Ryan caught her eye and smiled, the same warm smile that had first helped her believe in second chances. Marcus yawned and snuggled closer to both of them, secure in the knowledge that he was safe and loved. This was more than just healing from the past. It was building something new, something lasting. Tasha reached across and squeezed Ryan's hand, her eyes filled with gratitude and love. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the two people who meant everything to her, she knew with absolute certainty that they had created something precious and unbreakable. Their story wasn't just about escaping the darkness. It was about finding the light, about creating a family bound by choice and love rather than obligation. As the evening wrapped around them like a warm blanket, Tasha's heart was full, knowing that this was their new beginning, their fresh start, their happily ever after. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.